So what's the difference between the IRS ERC voluntary disclosure program and the withdrawal program? A lot of folks may not even realize there's a difference, but the IRS actually has two programs out there in which a taxpayer can effectively raise their hand and say they want to opt out of the ERC if they've already filed for the ERC. So the first one is what's called the voluntary disclosure program. And the voluntary disclosure program has a deadline attached to it. As of the recording of this video, the deadline's already passed, although the IRS is saying that they may re-implement the voluntary disclosure program and reinstate it. The voluntary disclosure program had a March 22nd deadline, 2024. The way the voluntary disclosure program works is if the taxpayer, and the word is willfully, if the taxpayer willfully violated tax law, then you could raise your hand and say, I intentionally violated tax law and I'm accepting as much and I want to pay the entire amount of my ERC back. The voluntary disclosure program is managed by the Criminal Investigation Division of the IRS, and it's for, if you go to the IRS webpage, the voluntary disclosure, they have an entire division of voluntary disclosure for folks who are looking to avoid criminal liability. It's not that you simply made a mistake in judgment or you made a mistake in math. You willfully, intentionally attempted to avoid your obligations. It's a significant decision you make. It ought not to be taken lightly, and that does not only involves financial calculations, but also involves legal calculations. We'd certainly encourage you to review all the nuances of what the legal ramifications are of the voluntary disclosure program. But the way the voluntary disclosure works is that if a taxpayer wants to go through the voluntary disclosure, the taxpayer will fill out a form identifying the amount and periods of ERC was claimed. The taxpayer will identify any accountants or consultants that assisted with the preparation of the ERC, and the taxpayer will then have to repay if the IRS accepts the voluntary disclosure. It's not guaranteed that they accept it, but if they do, if they accept the voluntary disclosure program, then the business will pay back 80% of the amount of the ERC that you received. So you could use the voluntary disclosure even if you've already received the funds, even if you've already cashed the check. If the voluntary disclosure option is open, you can submit to be accepted. If the IRS accepts your submission, you'll pay back 80% of the ERC you receive. Now, there's a caveat that you can't be under audit, right? So you can't, if you're under audit, you're under investigation, you can't say, oh, hey, wait, guess what? Voluntary disclosure. You have to do this before any audit is initiated as it relates to the ERC. As I mentioned, that did have a March 22nd deadline, which is since passed. However, the IRS is considering re-implementing, reinstituting the voluntary disclosure program. Now, this is an all or nothing deal. Either you give all the money back and you keep 20% of it, or you don't do it at all. And it's for folks who feel that willfully, they have intentionally violated the laws. I have made a mistake there. I made a math error. That's a different type of disclosure. So that's the voluntary disclosure program. Now, we have the withdrawal program. So the withdrawal program is slightly different. If you choose to withdraw your ERC, you can choose to withdraw it simply as long as, one, you're not under audit, and two, you have not received or cashed the refund check yet. If that's the case, so you could effectively withdraw your application for a certain period. This would be, for example, I filed for Q3 or Q4 2021, and I realized, oh man, I shouldn't have done that. You can effectively write withdraw on your amended 941X, submit it as a special fax number specifically for the withdrawal program, and the IRS will treat the 941 as if they never received it. It's an all or nothing program, but as it relates to individual quarters, not the entire ERC claim. If after reviewing your set of facts and circumstances, you realize that you misunderstood or miscalculated, or that you weren't eligible after the fact and you have not received a check yet, then you could withdraw from the filing. That's slightly different. There's a little less significance and there's less legalese. You don't have to enter into an agreement with the government to withdraw. You simply submit the quarter that you want to withdraw and submit that in. Now, there's a third option. If you made an error, for example, in calculations, you could amend the amended return as well. You identify that perhaps there's a math calculation error. You don't want to withdraw the full thing, but you need to correct filing. You could do that as well. So those are really the three options. We have the voluntary disclosure, the withdrawal program, and amendment. So those are things, while we're in this moratorium, we encourage folks to take a look at their numbers, get comfortable with how the calculations were completed, get comfortable with the supporting documentation behind the filing, and correct any errors that you may discover during this time period.